Oh, hi! You caught me in the ER. Speaking of being in pain, let's talk about the most painful comic I've come across in years. John Jacobs and the Power Team.
Hello, welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Chris. So, most of the time on this show, I love to analyze and look at the history of fantastic comics, but every once in a while, kind of helps to look at a comic book that didn't come out so great and see what we can learn from that, maybe have a little bit of fun along the way. And for that, we're going to look at this rare specimen, the Power Team, specifically John Jacobs and the Power Team. This is essentially a vanity or self-published comic by John Jacobs and the Power Team. They were real people. Throughout the 80s and the 90s especially, they were huge. What were they? Basically a team of bodybuilders that loved to talk about and spread the word of Jesus.
John Jacobs started the Power Team about 20 years ago, and their message has saved a lot of kids.
One young lady handed me a letter. She said, "This is for you." And I read the letter. It was a beautiful poem. The sad thing was, it was about how she was going to hang herself in the backyard. So many young people today are giving up and quitting.
So, what would they do for a comic book? They'd add one more thing on top of that. Yeah, this is a comic book about guys that love bodybuilding, they love Jesus, and they love driving around the country in a van fighting crime. It's going to be fun, but just to level set, if you've never heard of John Jacobs, let me tell you a little bit about him. John Jacobs was an athlete and a bodybuilder who around 1978 put together a traveling ministry where he would talk about God and Jesus, and on top of that, he'd give people a show with him and other bodybuilders basically just breaking a lot of stuff. Bricks and bats and blocks of ice, sometimes blocks of ice lit on fire. It really led to essentially a huge mess everywhere, but that was their way of spreading the word. Around the year 2000, he ended up divorcing his wife. A couple years later, he declared bankruptcy, and the Power Team still exists, but with a completely different crew. I've lost track of what happened to John Jacobs.
We are living in the last days. We're in a spiritual warfare like there's never been. There's a life and death struggle for the young people of America. Come on, somebody.
But in the 80s and the 90s, you know, that was an era where megachurches and preaching from TV started to become really big and popular. What else was popular? Huge athletes, guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger becoming actors. WWF, pro wrestling became huge. Shows like American Gladiators. And John Jacobs sort of took some of that. The really big buff guys just broke a lot of stuff and preached the word of God. I didn't always love their message because it wasn't the most sympathetic. He'd often go to a school and talk about how drugs and suicide were big problems for kids, but then he would sort of intimate that the people that fell into those traps were losers.
So many young people today are giving up and quitting.
He wasn't allowed to mention God and Jesus in the schools, but the point of it was he'd get that whole community that they traveled to interested and excited for their big main show that they'd have at a church or sometimes rent out an arena, and that's where they could talk about God and break a bunch of stuff. But in 1991, that was sort of when they were at their peak. That was also a time when comic books were at their peak. He decided to publish a bunch of issues about himself. Without any further preamble, let's get into talking about this absolutely absurd comic book. Issue 1 is called In the Grip of the Clips, and it takes place apparently Friday at 10:30 a.m. with 6 muscle-bound guys driving around in a van and teasing each other with light banter that is definitely not offensive. Things like this guy saying, "Rock Hagen hasn't been getting enough iron. He ate one of the barbells this morning." Very funny, Dozer. Do us all a favor, Crusher. Next time, don't get on the rowing machine and sing row, row, row your boats. It's embarrassing. It's also very hard to tell these guys apart. Sure, one of these guys is black, one guy has blonde hair, and one guy has a headband. After that, good luck telling them apart. It's not the most exciting introduction to your main characters. In fact, the main guy only has half of his face fitting into this splash page panel. And good lord, what's happening to this guy's face all the way on the left? It looks like he's melting, but just get used to that because artist David Wilson tends to draw people that look like absolute terrifying monsters or dolls that have been possessed by something. I don't know how to describe it, it's just scary. Page 2 and 3 is somewhat ambitious storytelling-wise. We've got a 2-page spread showing the Power Team van pulling up on a construction site. A bunch of punks are smashing and breaking the Youth Outreach and Activity Center. Why? Who knows? They're just generically evil. The number 2 guy in the gang is named Snake because he actually wears a silly little snake hat.
It is the first step towards Cobra domination of the universe.
And the gang is called the Clips because they all like to put paper clips in their ears. You know, like a real gang would do. The Power Team instantly get into a fight, which basically amounts to them doing a lot of their feats of strength that they would do in their live stage show. For instance, breaking a bat over their knee. The leader, Cliphead, decides to push a guy into some cement and say there's too many of them, so let's run away. In this panel, a brick wall is falling over. Now, let's note that the Clipheads did not do anything specific to attack that wall, so I have to assume that's just shoddy construction.
A class action lawsuit has been filed over the deadly condo collapse in Surfside.
The wall starts to fall down and 2 of the Power Team lunkheads start propping it up with their big muscles. I couldn't tell you which 2 they are. All I can tell you is that as this man runs screaming away, there's a leg behind his hard hat, and I can't quite tell if that's his or the Power Team members. It's probably the construction guys. I'm gonna guess that this is the titular character, John Jacobs, running in with a wooden board, and he's got the tiniest head on earth. It seems to be more of a tumor that's growing out of his left shoulder, but that's his problem, not ours. He runs in with a board to prop up the wall, and the 3 men are able to brace themselves and bring the wall back to its upright position. The next 3 members of the Power Team run in to save some kids who are inexplicably just sitting around in an active construction site, and in this particular panel, they're just standing underneath a steel beam that's about to fall. One guy runs in and grabs the kids. One of those kids we can see has the Benjamin Button premature aging disease. That's not her fault though, so, you know, I'm glad that she got saved. And the other 2 guys are able to hold up the steel long enough to save everybody. The biggest problem I have when reading this is I sincerely have trouble telling the guys apart. They're all just generically strong. They all wear the Power Team sweatsuit. It becomes very difficult to tell who is who unless you read the dialogue, because they're also not drawn very consistently. But, you know, I do give them credit for working out. Being healthy is great. I spent a whole week working out as hard as I could to match their physique, and I'll tell you, it was a lot of hard work. That was a tough week. We cut to the next morning and we meet Ruth Ann Jacobs. That was then the wife of the leader of the Power Team. And the intro panel isn't great because we're seeing her basically from behind. In the next panel, she thinks to herself how she really wants to never have a break from helping Jesus, and she prays to let Jesus lead someone to him. Right then, she gets surprised that her wish came true.
Make your 3 wishes.
When an evil little kid runs up and grabs her purse, but by the time he runs out, boom, John Jacobs is there, like a brick wall, tiny little head, huge body, knocks the kid and his bowl cut right down. In the manager's office of the grocery store, Ruth Ann says, "No, I won't press charges if you'll let me talk to you. Why did you do it?" "Everybody does it, lady." "Who's everybody?" "Don't you know nothing? The Clips, the Grubs, everybody does it. Look, I gotta go." Ruth Ann hands this troubled teen her business card, and I guess he goes away singing. But he's back to being angry the second he gets home. When his mother asks where he's been, he goes, "What's it to you? Look, I'm tired of your nagging. I don't need my old lady ragging me." And since the point of this episode is to actually learn something, I'm going to share this helpful little lesson from professional letterer Nate Picos, who shows you how the lettering on this panel probably should have gone instead of what it actually did. I've got important things on my mind. Important things like Cliphead telling him, "Don't go whining to your old lady. Remember, Clips don't give a rip." Tough talk from some tough bad guys. Clips don't give a rip.
I don't give a rip. I don't give a rip. Yo, I wear a paper clip. I don't give a rip cause my clip keeps it zipped.
Cut to about an hour later, and the power team and Ruth Ann are just having a powwow talking to each other, and Dozer tells them that he was once offered to join a gang, but he said no, and fortunately he just stood around and watched as they got arrested. The power team's ministries were based around the fact that John Jacobs would always tell the audience how dangerous gangs were and how much of a problem drugs were, but for some reason they need to have Dozer explain to them what's going on in society here. I don't get it. Cut to yet another hour later, and a pastor who's working on building that youth center calls up John Jacobs to make sure that he's still planning on coming and preaching, but then he admits something happened. And John Jacobs' eyeball yells, "What happened?" The pastor tugs at his tie and happily tells John about how a bunch of vandals came right back and destroyed their youth center. So John Jacobs breaks his second bat of the day. That evening, Cliphead yells at the little boy for not stabbing John Jacobs, and the kid with the terrible haircut says, "I don't know who that guy was, but somehow I don't think the knife would have helped anyway." I guess John Jacobs is just so tough, not even a knife can stop him. Cliphead then yells at the kid some more, telling him that, "Look, if you're gonna be a Clip, you're gonna have to rip. Got it? No, I thought that if you were a Clip, you didn't give a rip. Now you're telling me that if you're a Clip, you have to rip? I don't get it. What are you asking me to do, sir?" The troubled youth, Mike, has his mother crying at home, praying that she can get some help. She looks up out of her house window and realizes that this whole time there's been a billboard advertising the power team.
Has that always been there?
Add to that, she looks at the dresser, and there is the power team's business card that they gave to Mike. She puts them together and decides, hey, I'll actually call the power team. Lord, I don't think this is an accident. Beep, beep, beep. Hello, is this Ruth Ann Jacobs? Could you help me? Cliphead is still yelling at Mike and tells him, "Listen up, kid. You know that preacher that keeps hanging around our turf? The one with the little playhouse for wimpy kids? He doesn't learn too fast. We've hit his place twice, but he still managed to finish his little playhouse. I'm tired of messing with him, and you are gonna help me get rid of him forever." He demands that Mike burns the place down. Mike shows the briefest hesitation, so Snake and Cliphead basically torture him and tell Mike that if he doesn't burn down the youth center, that Cliphead will burn down his house and kill his family.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Sunday morning, 6:30 a.m., good Lord, that's early, Ruth Ann and Mike's mom are talking about how Mike is being pressured to join a gang, and Ruth Ann's great advice is, you've already done the most important thing you can do. You've prayed. Remember, God cares about you and Mike. I believe he is at work at this very moment. Cut to Mike coming in, and his face absolutely melts upon seeing Ruth Ann. Is this your son, Mrs. Grimes? Mike, you're in big trouble. You need big help. Now sit down and tell me the truth. It's time for you to meet a powerful friend of mine. She looks angry. And Mike looks angry. Then he looks embarrassed. And then he starts crying. Ruth Ann says that Jesus Christ answered his prayers by putting him and the power team in their lives and promises to help. So Mike confesses what he's been asked to do to the power team, and again, this artist cannot keep John Jacobs on model. He looks different every time I see him. Then this guy talks to him some more about Jesus and tells him that God is real. So they all hold hands in a circle. They all look like they've got stunted growth syndrome of some sort. Just some very strange perspective there, but boy does it make it fun to look at in its own way. And now we're halfway through the comics, so we get this huge 2-page spread full of all sorts of Power Team merchandise. There's an order form there. Oh my God, did they have a lot of merchandise. You'd think that this comic would be enough merchandise, but no, they've got ads throughout this for themselves. If you cut to the back, you can order a Power Team Bible. On the back, it tells you how you can order more Power Team comics, a Power Team Bible, a Power Team prayer guide, and if you sign up and become a member, they'll even send you a page from an old copy of the Bible. What a treat. Sunday night, the Clips are back at that youth center. They're just doing graffiti and throwing probably beer bottles. I don't know, maybe it's Dr. Pepper, maybe they're not that dangerous. And Cliphead actually punches one of his own guys because he's smoking near a gas can, which is irresponsible. Hey, Clips don't give a rip, but they do respect how dangerous gasoline is. Mike shows up, but stands up to the bullies and says, "I can't let you do it, Cliphead. It's not right." "What? Did you tell me you can't let me do it?" That's right, Cliphead. Now I know I'm not very big and I'm not very strong, but I'm just not gonna let you do this. It's wrong. You can kill me or hurt me, but you're not gonna do this. In Jesus' name.
Thank you.
All right, church boy, that's enough. You just picked a fight with the meanest dude you'll ever know in your short life. Yeah, Cliphead, almost as dangerous as Clippy, the guy who wants to tell you how to write a letter. So as the Clipheads act like little pirates and giggle and laugh, all of a sudden, the Power Team is there, and the caption is amusing here. It says, "The laughter suddenly chokes to silence as 5 gigantic shadows appear on the wall in front of the gang. The surprised gang members swiftly spin around." 5. There are 6 Power Team members in this issue, and by the way, that would only grow. These days there's like 30 Power Team members, but I like that they say 5 shadows. It's like, just add the 6th. Just add the 6th. Because I'm confused. Where's the other guy? John Jacobs seems to have smeared charcoal all over his face. He's got a little tiny hand, and he says, "Hold it right there, Cliphead. Let the boy go." Ruth Ann and Mike's mom came along just to witness the carnage and violence. Cliphead's about to kill Mike. They've got knives and swords and bats. Cliphead's shouting, "Either he joins me and the Clips, or he dies, man." John Jacobs and the Power Team, one of whom has become very small now, shout to him, "You've got it backwards, Cliphead. If you join the Power Team, then you can live." And even though all 6 team members are standing right there facing down the Clipheads, in the very next panel, one of them has jumped underneath the van's walkway and picks it up and tips everybody over. And then he drops it on top of some of the bad guys. The action scene then has the Power Team do a bunch of the stunts that they would do live on stage. They're bending steel bars, they're picking up big logs, and they're running through lumber. Again, these were all things that they did on stage, and they found a way to turn them into action scenes.
Always solve your problems with violence.
Apparently, almost all of the Clipheads have now been knocked out, and the Power Team stacks their bodies like they're stacking lumber. It's kind of dark when you think about it. The Power Team member called Dozer luckily finds a bulldozer plow, picks it up, uses it as a shield from guns, and knocks out 2 more guys. Cliphead apparently is also strong. He knocks a manhole cover out of John Jacobs' hands, tosses it aside instead of beating the man to death, and instead pulls out a gun. And here's our climax of the action scene. John Jacobs reaches for something. Cliphead says, "What? A weapon? You were gonna go for a concealed weapon. Very good, muscle man. You go for yours, and I'll go for mine. Ready? Go." "What? A book? It's just a book." "It's not just a book, Cliphead. Here's a quote. 'No weapon formed against me shall prosper.'" And John has literally decided to bring a Bible, a branded Bible, to a gunfight. Cliphead, of course, shoots at John, but for some reason, all of the bullets missed. And later, Cliphead explains, "I'm telling you, I saw somebody behind the guy, somebody who was even bigger than that commander dude." Apparently, when John Jacobs pulls out his Bible, it gives him supernatural powers. He's got a glowing sword that blocks bullets, and there's some sort of fiery angel, or maybe it's even God himself, standing behind and giving him supernatural powers. John Jacobs has basically become Ghost Rider. The remaining Clipheads start to wake up from their concussions. It cuts ahead, and the Clipheads are asking who Jesus is. They've never heard of him. John Jacobs steps in and talks about how Jesus died on the cross to give them, eternal hope or something like that. It doesn't really matter. What matters is he opens his book and it causes literal demons to be exorcised from the Clipheads. Yes, they were supernaturally empowered by demons this whole time. And the next morning, the power team is not going to do anything to continue to help the community. Instead, they've got their airline tickets. They're on to the next place. And we get this splash page hinting at the next issue. The next place they'll end up will apparently involve some sort of international terrorist who brags about having a grenade under his jacket. He's got some henchmen. So yeah, in the second issue, the power team goes all the way up from a gang to literal terrorists. I'll say this, it's pretty funny. These guys just sort of roll up and end up in action scenarios every single week, and they find a way to use their big muscles to stop the problems. The bad guys always sort of fall just short of shooting at them until the very end when they call on the divine powers of God. So a lot of their speeches and events, they didn't really talk too much about God. It was more just about warning people about the dangers of drugs and dark thoughts and suicide. And then every Sunday, they do a really big show, and that's when they talk about God and Jesus. But the comic just cuts to the chase, and it gives them actual people to fight. It's kind of hilarious that it acts like it's a ground level, sort of grounded thing where they're just sort of keeping a gang from causing trouble in a neighborhood. But by the very, very end, he does have supernatural powers. He can block bullets, he can exorcise demons. I say, just go with that. Give us an enemy. Give us a little demon running around chasing them each week. But yeah, I definitely recommend looking up some Power Team videos because it's kind of funny, just the stuff that they do. It's essentially, they made a huge mess every week for the church to clean up, but they did have that really brief window where they were really popular. They would show up on shows like Walker, Texas Ranger.
What I mean by that is a dream maker is somebody who helps other people reach their goals and dreams.
Walker told me I have AIDS.
But ultimately, the point of the comic is really just to sell even more stuff. There's no price on the front of the comic itself, so this might have been something that they sometimes gave out at schools. That would make sense because inside, they're trying to sell VHS tapes and signed posters, an actual bat, like the ones that they break, but I guess it's not broken. I think it would be cooler to get one of the ones that was actually broken on stage, And then on the back it says that for $100 a month, you become a member of the Power Team, their ministry, and they'll send you a page from the first edition King James Bible of 1611. There could only be so many of those pages, right? Well, I don't know. I guess there's multiple first printings. It's kind of funny to me that they're defacing a Bible to give you as a reward. They're like, yeah, I just ripped out this page. This one's your page. It's a little funny. I don't think it's very good art. I think the storytelling is a little awkward, but mostly I would say this is funny for the art because you cannot tell these 6 guys apart. They all have weird facial expressions. It's just a good time. Good luck finding a copy. Hopefully you don't have to pay more than $2 or $3. I just wanted to have fun looking at something silly. But next week, I'll be back with a more serious deep dive into comic book history. I think it's time to take a look at Marvel Comics' Marvel method and see what the artists had to say about that method. We know Stan Lee liked that method. It let him write several titles a month. But what did guys like Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko think? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about next episode. And until I see you next time, remember, keep reading comics. I really had aimed to have this episode to you guys last week, but as you could see with my opening intro, yeah, I was in the hospital. I'm doing okay now. Had a really bad day, and that slowed me down. I guess that's just life. But, you know, I'm feeling good now. And this is a sincerely funny comic to read. Unintentionally funny, but it is funny. I think they only made 5 issues. I'm still looking for the rest. So if you really love this, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to find the other issues. But I'm just trying to have some fun with it. As to whether something like this or Chick Tracts are more entertaining because they're both religious comics, I think Chick Tracts go more over the top. So I think that those are still more entertaining, but this is a more traditional comic book. And you know, hey, they printed it in full color. They had an artist and an inker and a letterer, and I give them credit for that. 1991. Self-published, very silly. Thanks so much for watching, and let me know in the comments what artists or comic book history you might like to see me take a look at, because I'm always open to ideas. Appreciate it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Oh, and please consider hitting like and subscribe. I always forget to tell people that. But hit like and subscribe, and in the description below there is a link to my Patreon if you want to support the show. Really appreciate it. Couldn't make it without you folks. Take care.